Where your treasure is, there will your heart be also. God has given us unlimited treasures in His Word. Every time we open it, we can discover a new treasure or admire an old one. What will we find today? Let's dig in. Here's Carla Early with Treasure Hunt in the Word.
In studying Elijah, I ran across an interesting person. The Bible gives a bit of his side story, but he's one I'm excited to hear the full tale of his exploits when I get to heaven. His name was Obadiah. Now, if that sounds familiar, it's because the Old Testament mentions 13 Obadiahs. Popular name. He lived around the same time period as the Obadiah whose short prophecy to Edom is recorded in the Minor Prophets, but this is most likely not the same guy. This Obadiah, in 1 Kings 18, is King Ahab's steward in charge of his house and livestock and such, much like Joseph was for Potiphar's house in Egypt. His name meant servant or worshipper of Yahweh, which showed his first priority was to the Lord, not to King Ahab. So why would Ahab, a Baal worshipper, want to entrust his entire household to a person who didn't have the same beliefs? Well, for the same reason Joseph became second in command of Egypt, and Daniel became a trusted advisor to several different regimes in Babylon, and Nehemiah was a cupbearer to the Persian king Artaxerxes. God gave Obadiah favor in the eyes of Ahab. He saw Obadiah as industrious, resourceful, and a man of integrity. The first thing we learn about Obadiah, other than his occupation, was that he feared the Lord greatly. He says later that he's feared the Lord since his youth, meaning that's how he was brought up. Unlike many all over Israel who had moved to Judah during the days of Jeroboam and Asa, Obadiah's family chose to stay in Israel and continue worshiping God as a minority. To be in the world, but not of it, as we are called to do in many of our situations. In this little aside in verses 3 and 4, we get a glimpse of Obadiah's true job. He wasn't just working as Ahab's steward. He was also hiding 100 prophets of God from Jezebel who'd been on a killing spree. He hid them in caves and provided food and water for them, even in this drought. It was like Christians of Nazi-occupied Europe who hid Jews so they wouldn't be exterminated. Obadiah lived a brave double life. Elijah met him when he was on a mission trying to find water for Ahab's livestock. They must have met before because Obadiah recognized Elijah. Perhaps he'd been present when Elijah had announced the drought to Ahab a few years before. Elijah told him to go tell Ahab where he was. For some reason, Obadiah was afraid Elijah would disappear and Ahab would be angry enough to kill him. Then what would happen to those 100 prophets in the caves? Apparently, this fear was quite legitimate. Elijah promised to stay put, so Obadiah went to fetch Ahab. We never hear about this man again. But if Elijah had been listening, he would have had some serious encouragement from God. Not only Obadiah and his family, but at least 100 others in Samaria believed in God and did not worship Baal. Elijah thought he was alone. He even says in his showdown with the 450 prophets of Baal later in that chapter, "I alone am left a prophet of the Lord." In the next chapter, we see Elijah fleeing for his life, and he says the same thing. "I alone am left, and they seek my life." Did he not pay attention to Obadiah? He could have hid out in the caves with the other prophets and enjoyed fellowship instead of feeling so alone. But he didn't. Finally, God had to tell him, "Stop feeling sorry for yourself. I have 7,000 in Israel who are mine and have never worshipped Baal." I want to be like Obadiah, brave, industrious, resourceful, obedient, with the Lord's kingdom as my number one priority. And though Elijah was a bold prophet of God, I don't want to be like him in this one instance. He missed God's encouragement and didn't surround himself with fellow believers when he needed it the most. We all need Christian fellowship, more at certain times than others. If we don't take advantage of the joy and comfort Christian fellowship brings, we'll find ourselves like Elijah, feeling alone and overwhelmed. So pay attention to Obadiahs that God brings in your life And don't forsake the assembling together of yourselves, Christian fellowship.
You can contact us at treasurehuntintheword@gmail.com. We'd love to hear the treasures God has given you through His Word. You can listen to other episodes at our website, which you can find in the description below. Thanks for listening, and remember, where your treasure is, there will your heart be also.